Have you ever had one of those neighbors who just can't seem to respect boundaries, both literally and figuratively? Well, let me tell you about mine. When I first bought my ranch property, I thought I had found paradise. Picture this, rolling acres of green grass, tall trees swaying in the wind, and right in the center of it all was a private lake. It wasn't just a pond or a little water hole, no, this was a genuine, sparkling, blue lake that reflected the sky like glass on calm days and shimmered with ripples when the breeze picked up. For me, that lake wasn't just part of the land, it was the main reason I bought the place. I imagined quiet mornings fishing, afternoons kayaking, and evenings sitting by the water watching the sun go down. It was supposed to be my escape, my slice of peace away from the noise of the world. At first, everything was going great. I fixed up the ranch house, cleared out some old fencing, and got to know a few of the neighbors. Most of them were friendly enough, waving when I drove by, stopping to chat about the weather, even offering to help when they saw me working outside. But there was one neighbor who stood out immediately, and not in a good way. Everyone in the neighborhood called her Karen, and believe me, she lived up to the name in every sense of the word. She wasn't just a neighbor, she was also on the HOA, and if you've ever dealt with an HOA, you know exactly the kind of power-tripping behavior that can come with it. From the moment I met her, she had this air about her, like she was in charge of everything. She talked loud, demanded things be done her way, and always acted like she knew more about my property than I did. I remember the very first week I moved in, she marched right up to my driveway while I was unloading boxes and said, "You know, around here we keep our lawns cut on Thursdays. And don't even think about painting your house without running it by the HOA first." No welcome to the neighborhood, no friendly introduction, just rules and demands. I brushed it off at first, thinking maybe she was just being overzealous, but over time it became clear, this woman thought she was queen of the community. She'd walk around with a little notepad, writing down supposed violations she noticed. If someone's trash bin was visible from the street for more than a few hours, she'd send a warning letter. If kids left their bikes outside, she'd scold their parents. She even knocked on my door once to complain that my porch light was too bright at night. I honestly started calling her the self-appointed sheriff of the neighborhood. The funny thing is, most people didn't like her either, but nobody wanted to get into a fight with her because she was relentless. Now, here's where things take an interesting twist. See, while Karen was busy playing dictator, what she didn't know was that I had quietly joined the HOA board not long after moving in. I didn't make a big deal about it, didn't announce it to everyone, but when the position of treasurer opened up, I volunteered. To my surprise, most people voted me in without much fuss. That meant I had full control over the HOA's budget, all the financial records, and the final say when it came to approving spending. It was a position Karen didn't pay much attention to because she assumed she was the one really running things. And honestly, I kept it that way on purpose. Let her think she was in charge. Life went on pretty normally for a while, but every interaction with Karen just reinforced the idea that she saw herself as the ultimate authority. She'd corner me in the street to lecture me about HOA rules that weren't even real, like telling me my pickup truck wasn't aesthetically pleasing enough to park in front of my house. Another time, she scolded me for putting up a hammock in my backyard, saying it was visible to the community and ruined the uniform look. I laughed it off because it was ridiculous, but deep down, I started realizing she was the type of person who would push and push until someone pushed back. I wasn't wrong. One summer, her obsession with control took a turn I could have never predicted. It all started when I noticed strange activity around my lake. At first, I thought maybe it was just kids sneaking in to fish, which honestly wouldn't have bothered me too much if they had just asked. But then, on one Saturday morning, I came out with my coffee and froze. There were full-on families gathered around the lake, coolers, lawn chairs, fishing rods, even a barbecue grill set up. They were acting like it was a public park. I marched down there, still in disbelief, and asked politely, "Excuse me, what's going on here? This is private property." One of the men, without hesitation, looked up at me and said, "Oh, Karen said it's fine. She told us this lake belongs to her son now and we're welcome to use it whenever we want." I almost dropped my coffee right there. Karen had actually gone around telling people that my lake, my private, deeded property, was hers to give away like some kind of birthday gift to her son. And the craziest part? These people believed her. They were out there fishing in my lake, sitting on my land, acting like it was their new hangout spot because Karen had given them the green light. I was so stunned I didn't even know what to say at first. But I quickly collected myself and explained, firmly but calmly, that they'd been misled, that the lake was on my deed, and that they needed to pack up and leave. Most of them looked embarrassed, muttered something about not knowing, and started gathering their things. But I could tell they weren't happy about it. As they left, I felt my blood boiling. This wasn't just Karen being nosy about lawns or trash bins, this was her flat out trying to give away my property. And if she was bold enough to do this once, who knew what she'd try next? That's when I made a decision. I wasn't going to let this slide. I was going to confront her directly, face to face, and make it absolutely clear that she had crossed a line she would never be allowed to cross again. Little did I know that confrontation would end with flashing police lights in front of my house, all because Karen couldn't handle being told no. After watching those families pack up and leave the lake that morning, I was fuming. I couldn't wrap my head around how entitled you had to be to think you could just hand out someone else's private property like a party favor. The worst part wasn't even the strangers fishing in my lake, it was the fact that Karen had the audacity to use my land as some sort of bargaining chip to make herself look powerful. I didn't even finish my coffee. I set the mug down, marched across the neighborhood, and knocked on Karen's front door. She opened it almost immediately, like she'd been expecting me, with this smug grin stretched across her face. "Well, well," she said, leaning against the doorframe like she owned the world. "I figured you'd be here sooner or later. Don't be such a grump, it's just a lake. Nobody's hurting anything." I stared at her, trying to hold back my temper. "Karen, it's not just a lake. It's my property. On my deed. That means legally, it belongs to me, not you, not your son, and not the community. You don't have the right to let people use it." Instead of apologizing or even pretending to understand, she rolled her eyes so hard I thought they'd get stuck. "Oh, come on. You don't even use it that much. It's selfish to keep something like that all to yourself when the rest of us could enjoy it. My son loves fishing, and the poor boy hardly has anywhere to go. Why not let him have it? He'll take better care of it than you do anyway." I was stunned by the sheer entitlement dripping from her words. Let him have it? Karen, you don't get to give away something that doesn't belong to you. That's not generosity, that's stealing. Her grin vanished, replaced by a scowl. "Don't you dare accuse me of stealing. I am doing what's best for this neighborhood. You're new here, you don't understand how things work. We share, we look out for each other, and we make sacrifices for the greater good." I couldn't help but laugh, though it was more out of disbelief than amusement. Sacrifices for the greater good? That's rich. You mean you get to boss people around, make the rules, and act like queen of the HOA, and the rest of us are supposed to just give up whatever you want? Not happening. That hit a nerve, because her face turned beet red and she raised her voice. "You're harassing me. You show up at my door, yelling, accusing me of things I didn't do, and trying to intimidate me. I won't stand for this." And before I knew it, she whipped out her phone and started dialing. I blinked in disbelief. "Are you seriously calling the cops right now? For what? For telling you that you can't give away my lake?" But she didn't answer me. She turned slightly away, speaking loud enough for me to hear every word she said to the dispatcher. "Yes, hello, I need the police. My neighbor is on my property, threatening me, yelling at me, and refusing to leave. Yes, it's urgent, I feel unsafe." She even threw in a little fake tremble to her voice, like she was some helpless victim. I was standing there in shock. Not only had she lied about my property, now she was lying about me harassing her. I backed up a few steps, not wanting to give her any more ammo for her story, and just said calmly, "Fine. Call them. I'll be right here when they arrive." About 20 minutes later, 2 squad cars rolled into the neighborhood, lights flashing. Of course, Karen made a big show of running out of her house, waving her arms, and pointing at me like I was some dangerous criminal. I stood there with my arms crossed, waiting for the officers to come over. One of them approached me while the other stayed with Karen, who was dramatically clutching her chest like she might faint. "Sir," the officer said, "we got a call about a disturbance. Can you explain what's going on?" I handed him the folder I'd brought with me from the house. The property deed, complete with maps and boundaries that clearly showed the lake was mine. "Officer, it's simple. My neighbor here has been telling people that they can use my private lake because she gifted it to her son. When I confronted her about it, she accused me of harassment and called you. Everything she said is a lie. This is my property." The officer took his time flipping through the paperwork, nodding as he looked it over. He asked me a few clarifying questions, how long I'd lived there, whether I'd ever given permission for community use, and I answered calmly. Then he walked back over to Karen, who immediately started raising her voice again. "He's lying. That lake belongs to the neighborhood. Everyone knows it. He's trying to hoard it for himself." The officer held up the papers I'd given him. "Ma'am, according to these records, the lake is on his property deed. It's not part of the HOA common grounds. That means it belongs to him, and you cannot authorize anyone to use it." Karen's jaw dropped. She sputtered for a moment, looking for something to say, then finally blurted out, "Well, if it's his, he should be forced to share. It's unfair for him to keep it all to himself." The cop raised an eyebrow, clearly unimpressed. "That's not how property ownership works. You can't give away someone else's land, and you certainly can't call the police on them for confronting you about it. I suggest you stop making false claims, ma'am, or you could face legal consequences." I swear, watching the color drain from her face in that moment was almost worth the headache of the whole ordeal. She muttered something about unreasonable people under her breath and stormed back inside her house, slamming the door so hard the windows rattled. The officer turned back to me and said, "Looks like you've got yourself a difficult neighbor. If she tries something like this again, document everything. And if she keeps making false reports, we can deal with it on our end." I thanked him, shook his hand, and walked back to my house feeling a strange mix of relief and frustration. Relief, because the cops had sided with me and the truth was on my side. Frustration, because I knew deep down this wasn't the end of it. Karen wasn't the type to back down after being embarrassed. If anything, she'd come back swinging even harder. And as I sat on my porch later that evening, watching the last light of the sun shimmer across the lake, I had a sinking feeling I was right. This wasn't over, not by a long shot. After the cops left that day, I thought maybe, just maybe, Karen would realize she had gone too far and back off. But I clearly underestimated her. People like Karen don't learn from being proven wrong, they double down. And over the next few weeks, that's exactly what she did. She didn't come to my door anymore, but instead, she went behind the scenes, working her own version of damage control by twisting the story in her favor. It started in the neighborhood Facebook group. One evening, as I was scrolling through, I saw her name plastered all over the feed. She had written this long post claiming I was hoarding resources and ruining the community spirit. She painted this picture of me as some greedy outsider who moved in just to take away things that belonged to everyone. She even wrote, "It's unfair that one person controls the lake when it could bring joy to so many families. He doesn't even use it. He just lets it sit there, wasted." And of course, her little group of loyal followers, neighbors who either feared her or wanted to stay on her good side, jumped into the comments with things like, "That's not fair," and "The HOA should do something about this." Reading it all made my blood boil, but I didn't take the bait. I knew better than to get into a keyboard war with someone who thrived on drama. Instead, I quietly took screenshots of everything. A few days later, flyers started showing up in mailboxes around the neighborhood. Guess whose face was at the top? Karen's. She had printed out these ridiculous newsletters talking about a community initiative to make the lake available to all residents. She wrote that she was working on getting the HOA to designate it as common property and was inviting people to come to the next HOA meeting to support the cause. She even had the nerve to say in her flyer that my refusal to share the lake was an act of selfishness and against the spirit of the neighborhood. At this point, I knew she wasn't going to stop unless I shut her down in front of everyone. And luckily for me, the timing couldn't have been better, because the next HOA meeting was only a week away. As the treasurer, I was required to attend anyway, and I decided that meeting would be the perfect place to finally expose her nonsense once and for all. The night of the meeting arrived, and the clubhouse was more packed than usual. Clearly, Karen's little campaign had stirred up interest. She walked in with her son right by her side, both of them looking like they were about to take center stage. Her son even had a fishing hat on, as if to emphasize the point that he was the rightful owner of the lake now. Karen strutted up to the front like she was the star of the show, papers in hand, ready to rally her troops. When it came time for community concerns, she stood up, cleared her throat dramatically, and launched into her speech. "Friends and neighbors," she began, "for too long we have been denied access to a beautiful natural resource that should belong to all of us. The lake in our community has been unfairly claimed by one individual who refuses to share. I believe it is time for us to take action and make the lake a community space, so that our families, our children, and future generations can enjoy it together." She spoke with all the flair of a politician, gesturing with her hands, raising her voice, pausing for effect. And to my frustration, I could see some people nodding along, caught up in her performance. But I also noticed others glancing at me, waiting to see how I would respond. When she finished, she gave this triumphant smile and sat back down like she had already won. That was my cue. I stood up calmly, holding the HOA's financial report folder in my hands. "I'd like to address this," I said, keeping my voice steady but firm. Everyone turned toward me, and I could feel Karen's glare burning into the side of my head. "First of all," I said, "let's clear up one major misconception. That lake is not, and has never been, part of the HOA common property. It is deeded private property, and it belongs to me. I have the documents right here to prove it." I held up the deed and waved it slightly so everyone could see. "Legally, the HOA has zero authority over it. We cannot vote to seize it, we cannot designate it as community land, and we certainly cannot spend HOA funds on it." Karen immediately shot up from her chair, her voice rising. "That's not true. You're lying. You just don't want people to know the truth." But I held my ground. "Actually, Karen, what's not true is the story you've been spreading around this neighborhood. You've been telling people they can fish in my lake because you gifted it to your son. You've been posting false information online, distributing flyers, and trying to stir up conflict over something that isn't yours to control. And now you're asking this HOA to spend money we don't have on a project that isn't even legal." That got the crowd murmuring. People started flipping through their meeting packets, where the financial report I'd prepared clearly showed that the HOA's budget was already stretched thin. I continued, "Right now, our funds are allocated to essential things, road repairs, landscaping, safety improvements. Even if we wanted to take on this project, which again, we can't, it would require tens of thousands of dollars we don't have. As treasurer, I can assure you there's no room in the budget for it, nor will there be." Karen's face twisted into pure rage. She pointed at me and shouted, "You're manipulating the numbers. You're just using your position to bully me. This isn't fair. But the board president, who had been silent until then, finally stepped in. Karen, enough. He's right. I've reviewed the same financial reports, and everything he's saying is accurate. This lake issue is not up for debate. It's private property, and the HOA has no authority over it. We are moving on. The look on Karen's face was priceless. She sat back down, her cheeks flushed red, whispering furiously to her son while the rest of the room turned their attention to the next item on the agenda. Her big moment had just been completely dismantled in front of everyone, and there was nothing she could do about it. But while I may have won that round, I knew Karen. She wasn't going to stop quietly. In fact, I could already see the wheels turning in her head. And sure enough, after that meeting, she started getting even more creative with her attempts to undermine me. She couldn't touch the lake legally, and she couldn't force the HOA to take it, but she wasn't about to give up the fight. If anything, the public humiliation just made her more determined. What Karen didn't realize, though, was that I had only just begun to fight back. She thought her loud voice and scare tactics could carry her through, but I had the one thing she didn't: the truth, the paperwork, and control of the budget. And I was more than ready to use all of it to finally put her in her place. Walking out of that HOA meeting, I thought maybe Karen would finally understand that she had crossed the line. She'd been embarrassed in front of the entire community, her grand speech had collapsed under the weight of facts, and even the board president had shut her down. But if there's one thing I've learned about people like Karen, it's that they don't accept defeat. They see it as a temporary setback, just another obstacle to bulldoze through with more lies, more noise, and more manipulation. And sure enough, over the next few weeks, Karen doubled down. She couldn't use the HOA to grab my lake, but she started trying to attack me personally instead. It began with whispers. I'd catch neighbors giving me side-eye glances, and when I tried to wave hello, some wouldn't wave back anymore. Eventually, one of the friendlier neighbors pulled me aside and said, "Hey, I thought you should know. Karen's telling people you're planning to put up a fence around the lake with barbed wire so no one can ever get near it. She's saying you're dangerous and unstable." I couldn't help but laugh at how ridiculous that sounded, but the scary part was, people believed her. She was creating this narrative that I was some selfish tyrant hoarding nature itself, when in reality all I wanted was for people to respect property boundaries. Now, at first, I wanted to just ignore her. Let her burn herself out, let the rumors die down. But then I remembered what the police officer told me: document everything. And I realized that if I didn't act, Karen would just keep spreading lies until people started thinking they were true. That's when I came up with a plan, one that would use the very HOA rules Karen worshipped so much against her. At the next board meeting, during the new business section, I calmly presented a proposal I'd drafted. It was simple, clear, and airtight. I proposed that the HOA adopt a new bylaw: any member who deliberately makes false claims of ownership over another resident's property, or who misrepresents community assets for personal gain, would be subject to steep fines and possible removal from any HOA committee positions. I laid it out logically, citing the chaos that Karen's lies had caused, the police involvement, and the division it had sown among neighbors. Then I reminded everyone that our HOA was supposed to be about protecting property values and harmony, not tearing each other apart. The reaction in the room was immediate. People nodded. Some muttered things like, "Yeah, that makes sense," and "We can't have this kind of drama anymore." Karen, of course, exploded. She jumped up from her seat, practically shouting, "This is an attack on me. He's targeting me because I care about this community." But the board president raised his hand to silence her. "Karen, you've had your say. Sit down." For once, she actually obeyed, though she looked like she was about to burst into flames. The board voted. And by a clear majority, the bylaw passed. Just like that, Karen's antics had consequences. The very next week, she was fined heavily for her false claims about the lake, and because she had already been warned by the police about her behavior, she was stripped of her little HOA committee role, the one she always bragged about, the one she used to push people around. When the notice went out to the entire community, you could practically feel the shift in the air. Neighbors who had been quiet before started talking again. Some even apologized to me, saying they didn't realize how far Karen had gone. It was like the spell she'd cast over the neighborhood was finally broken, and people were seeing her for what she really was, a bully who thrived on control. Karen, of course, didn't take it well. For a few days, I'd see her pacing around her yard, talking furiously on the phone, probably ranting to anyone who would listen. Her son sulked around too, clearly disappointed that his promised gift of the lake had disappeared. But slowly, their presence faded. She stopped showing up at meetings, stopped patrolling the streets with her notepad, and for the first time since I'd moved in, the neighborhood actually felt peaceful. One evening, I sat by the lake with a cup of coffee, watching the sun dip low and paint the sky with orange and purple streaks. The water shimmered, birds skimmed the surface, and for the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe easy. That lake wasn't just a piece of property, it was a reminder of why I'd chosen this place. It was my sanctuary. And knowing that Karen no longer had any power to mess with it made the moment even sweeter. But more than that, the whole ordeal taught me a valuable lesson. People like Karen think volume equals authority. They think if they yell loud enough, spread enough lies, or act confident enough, they can bend reality to their will. And sometimes, for a while, they succeed. But in the end, facts matter. Paperwork matters. The truth matters. And if you stand your ground calmly, document everything, and use the system against the very people trying to abuse it, you can turn the tables completely. Now, whenever I see Karen, it's almost comical. She still lives in the neighborhood, of course, but she keeps her head down. She avoids eye contact with me, doesn't speak at community events, and no longer struts around like she owns the place. Every once in a while, I catch her peeking through her blinds, watching me enjoy a quiet morning by the lake. And I can't help but smile. Because every time she sees me out there, it's a reminder that she tried to steal something from me, she tried to humiliate me, and she failed. Not only did she fail, but she lost her reputation, her influence, and her precious HOA role in the process. Some neighbors still joke about it when we're chatting. Hey, how's the lake doing? Belong to you today, or did Karen give it away again? We all laugh, but underneath the humor is a shared understanding, nobody messes with someone else's property anymore. The bylaw I pushed through didn't just protect me, it set a precedent for the whole neighborhood. And deep down, I think even the people who once sided with Karen are relieved. At the end of the day, peace returned not because I shouted louder than her, but because I chose strategy over noise. And that's something I'll always carry with me. Whenever life throws a Karen my way, someone who wants to control, manipulate, or take what isn't theirs, I'll remember this lesson: don't stoop to their level. Stand tall, stay calm, and let the truth do the work. So now, every time I walk down to the lake, I feel this quiet satisfaction. The water is calm, the air is fresh, and the only sounds are the rustle of leaves and the ripple of fish breaking the surface. My lake is mine again, untouchable, unchallenged. And Karen? She's just a background character now, a reminder of a battle fought and won. And believe me, there's nothing sweeter than winning against someone who thought they held all the power, when in reality, the power was mine all along.